Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Melissa Creede. I met her through a mastermind group that we're both a part of, and she has been so generous in being flexible and getting on the podcast. So I'd love to introduce her. Melissa helps celebrities and leaders leverage their platforms for social change. In doing so, they stay relevant longer and gain loyal followers and gain market share. Melissa has a specialty in coaching leaders and influencers to be more strategic, to drive towards their vision and purpose, apply it to their day-to-day work, and focus on what's important, not just what's urgent. Melissa is an international best-selling author of Beyond Your Inbox, Intentional Leadership in a Distracted World. Melissa's 30 years of experience have spanned boardrooms and Fortune 500 company executives to non-electrified communities in rural Argentina. Wow. And everything in between. Prior to becoming a coach, she was a climate change, clean energy, and sustainability consultant. Melissa has a passion for travel and has worked and played in over, oh, I love that, and played in over 60 countries in Ethiopia, Ecuador, and Nepal, as well as extensively throughout the United States and Canada. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Vanessa.
How are you doing?
I'm great. It's good to be here with you.
Yes. Well, I always love reading people's intros, but I love hearing from the expert themselves. So, oh my gosh, where to even start? Celebrities, leaders, where did this coaching journey start and how did you land on that?
Well, it started with, funnily enough, with me being coached. So I was an executive in my former career as a consultant, and all of the executive team had a coach. So I got introduced to coaching on the other side of the table, and I just found it so useful. But it coincided with, at the time I was consulting to large organizations about climate change and clean energy and sustainability. And I started to be a lot more fascinated with the leadership element of that. So we were advising on recommendations and content, but it was really noticing how certain leaders were able to take what we were recommending and convince their board, convince their executive team, get buy-in for different things, move it through a system. So I was really sort of fascinated by the leadership element of that, which was the spur of how I shifted my career to becoming a coach and a leadership expert.
Wow. What got you into sustainability and energy in the first place? That's such a unique and specific field to go into.
I'm always looking for my origin story on that. And I think I've always been someone who's loved the outdoors. So I think that's what spurred my initial interest in the environment and just, being connected to natural spaces. But early in my mid-20s, I was actually in a technical space, and it was the kind of field where you had to be an expert after 20 or 30 years. And I was an ambitious 26-year-old, and I didn't want to wait around for all of the older people to step aside for me to step into my power, I guess, and do some exciting things. And climate change at the time was just emerging as a field, an industry to work in. It was just after around the same time the Kyoto Protocol was signed in 1997. So there was a lot of activity, a lot of good energy in the world around okay, we're all going to come together and do these. So there was a lot of dynamism in the field. And also as a, mid to late 20s something, I only had to be a few weeks ahead of everybody else to be the expert. So as long as I was on top of everything, I knew what was happening, people would still look to me and to the rest of my colleagues for advice on these things. So I could step into that leadership role quite young because it was a really evolving field. It's sort of some of the pieces that led me to that space.
I love that. I work at Thunderbird School of Global Management with students who are just trying to figure out their career trajectory. And I find it so fascinating because they're like, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I want to do this. And I'm like, all right, we can do whatever we want. I think sometimes they think they need all these credentials before they can go, but it's also really interesting to hear you don't have to know before you go. You could just kind of figure it out as you go along. Yeah. What would you tell somebody in that?
Yeah, and especially in a rapidly changing field, because it's not a field where people have been doing this for 40, 50, 60 years. So you can step in, and as long as you stay up on top of everything, you can be the expert.
Right. And I think that's so fascinating because sometimes just getting your feet wet and figuring diving in, you can figure out if you like it or if it's a career pivot that you have to make post that role. But that goes so relevantly to working with celebrities and influencers. How did that come about? I know you said leaders, you love working with leaders, but what made you pivot into the celebrity world?
Yeah, so you've seen that most of my career, because I was a consultant for 12 years and I worked in another field before that. So most of my career has been in the social impact space, climate change,
Gotcha.
sustainability, clean energy, international development, social equity, all kinds of things. But after working in the field for a long time, and there's a lot of impatience that comes with, okay, let's just get on with these things. And I think there are many ways to tackle the same issue. I'm always looking at things from all perspectives. So my background has always been in the corporate space and entrepreneurs and businesses. But I was looking around thinking, well, celebrities have a lot of influence. They actually have the power, the unique situation to actually change the world. So just for an example, like Taylor Swift, before she even became as popular as she is now. So in 2000 I think it was 2019, she posted on her Instagram about voting, just a simple post about getting out to vote. And within 1 hour, voter registration platforms had an increase of 1,226% engagement from one Instagram post from a celebrity. So they actually have the opportunity to change the world. So that's where my interest started to be interested in how to actually influence this from many ways. But once I started working in it more, and once I started looking at it more, it actually helps the celebrity a significant amount too, because it increases their relevance. They get more media coverage and more media interviews and things like that. They grow their followership. So, using Taylor Swift again, because she's in our public eye quite a bit, when she started speaking up about misogyny and sexism, her market share went up significantly. And it was mostly in the adult women category, who most of them probably couldn't even name 3 of her songs, but they've become her army. They will defend her because she has become their voice for a cause that they care about. So this is what happens. You gain followers, you gain loyal followers. They're dedicated because you have something in common values-wise, but that celebrity is also speaking on behalf of other people. So that symbiotic relationship increases. So I often use an example. So if these are made up numbers, but let's just say Taylor had 10% of the market that loved her before and 10% of the market that hated her. And 80% of the people didn't really have a strong opinion about her. Once she started speaking up about misogyny and sexism, it forced people to make a decision about her. So she gained haters, but people don't talk about the fact that she gained followers too. And that's the ones I was talking about, loyal, dedicated. And they're not her fans because of her music. They might like her music, but that's not why they're so dedicated to her. And we see this with other celebrities. Yeah, what she stands for. So we see this with other celebrities. We see this in businesses too, when people take a stand on things. Yes, they get people that reject that, but they get very loyal followers who will continue to buy from them, who will support them in ways that they wouldn't support another organization. So this happens across the board because, I mean, we're all going to be canceled for something. And the more you're in the public eye, you are going to be canceled for things. So you might as well be canceled for something that you care about, that makes a difference, and that actually gains you followers and fans in other areas.
I find this so fascinating. I feel like I've had this conversation with friends before. Like, sometimes I think celebrities have a duty to speak out, like I know they didn't get into it for the politics and the topics, but it's like you now have this big following. And to your point, what impact on the world do you want to have? What influence do you want to have? What do you want to leave behind? And I think if you have somebody in your corner who can strategize that to make it authentic to you, I think it's so important. I feel like it's like, why not? Like, to your point, you're going to lose people who don't like you anyway. So forget them. But the ones who like you, and then the ones who might be shy, especially when it comes to like topics so hard, like women's issues, racism, politics. It's like, why not get in the game?
Well, and I think you're pointing to a phenomena that has shifted. There is an increased expectation on those in the public eye, whether that's a celebrity or a business leader, to speak up about important causes. And we see when they don't, the backlash that they get for that. And when I notice, I don't see people as much interested just in the celebrity lifestyle that's just the glamour. There is a lot more expectation now to use your platform for something meaningful. And I think if a celebrity or a leader doesn't prepare for that, they don't know what they stand for. They don't know what their values are. They don't know where they want to take a stand. They don't know the issues to sort of how to navigate through that, the terminology. If they haven't created a strategy that's cohesive, that's authentic too. It has to be authentic. If it's not authentic and someone's just choosing a cause because it's safe or because they think it's the cause of the day, it backfires. They have missteps. They don't talk about it authentically. People can tell. But I think they do need to get into a situation where they work with, I work with someone like me, work with someone who knows how to. So I'm not an expert in the PR side of things. My expertise is more on the social change and the leadership part of it. But by working through this in a private conversation where you can figure out what you want to do, and then go back to your PR team, go back to your communications department in your organization, say, okay, how can we make this work? It's the integration of all of that that's important, but most people don't spend the time doing the upfront strategizing or thinking. And then an issue comes up and they either speak up without knowledge about it, or they don't speak up at all. And both of those are dangerous situations.
Yeah, I think that is. I feel like in today's day and age with social media, people so quickly post something, not knowing, or repost something, not knowing what are you talking about, right? Like that's not actually anything. But I have so many questions because I find this so fascinating. I was just having this conversation too, just about different topics around the world. So hot issues that you feel passionate about, what would you tell somebody who's like, I want to use my platform in that way, but I don't want the backlash. I'm scared.
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody in that
space?
I
do think, like I said, you have to work with someone who knows how to do this. So most PR teams and communication teams, they don't have an expertise in this. So they're going to go for the safe issue. And a lot of times it just doesn't land and it doesn't resonate. So I think you can go for something that's really meaningful for you, even if it's a bit controversial. In fact, sometimes the more controversial, the better in some ways, because you weed out the people that aren't aligned with your values. You do need a strategy. You need to work through this. But I think you have to expect that you're going to get backlash. But like I said, people get backlash for everything. And as soon as you're in the public eye, you're going to. So rather than trying to chase that, or trying to find all the safe things to talk about, which kind of makes you a little bland, and we know in the celebrity space, relevance and coverage matters. You want to be authentic about it, but you have to have a bit of a strategy of how you're going to approach this.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
I would say they need to work with someone like me.
Yes. So tell me more about what working with you looks like. What programs do you have? Any offerings coming up right now? Programs coming up? What does it look like for people to work with you?
For stuff like this, it's mostly one-on-one. So I have one-on-one coaching. It's usually about 6 months, a few times a month, but that includes, in between conversations about things. But I like to start it when people are open to it, to what we call like a VIP intensive. So that's usually 3/4 of a day, something like that, where we really delve into the person's values, the issues that are really meaningful to them. And my experience working with people is the issues that they first say are not the ones that we end up with. It's sort of like the obvious ones come out first, but when we really dig deeper, and when it's something personal, when there's a reason why you're attracted to this cause, then it's a great place to start. So we work through the values, we work through different issues that they could be speaking up about. It's not always just one, but a lot of times we start with 1 or 2. And then I go away and help them come up with all the different pieces of that, which, again, what might be some issues that come up, all the different parts of that, and come back together for a bit of a strategy. And then in some cases, we work with their teams to help integrate it into their strategies, because I'm not the PR person, but it's helping even that individual speak about it to their own team, because they don't know all these issues in the details of it. And then there is a tendency to want to play it safe. And there are ways to start with things that are a little bit safer, but again, they have to be authentic. Not everybody's going to talk about pets or something that is like sort of a universal, like positive story. And, I often use examples. So look at someone like Lady Gaga. So we know Lady Gaga speaks up about HIV. She speaks out about LGBTQ plus issues. She speaks up about mental health. She has, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's very authentic. She has a bit of a strategy because it's consistent. And she gets interviews because of that. And we remember her. We remember her with her meat dress. We remember her with her condom dress. And so it gets a lot of coverage that aren't even from the original interviewers. And because it's truly authentic from her, we can feel that it's coming from a place of something she cares about. It resonates with people. And even if it's not your cause, there's something about it that sparks something in you to actually want to talk about your own causes. So like there's a ripple effect that happens with her as well. And so that's often what we're looking for. It's just, I mean, not everyone has to go wear a meat dress or a condom dress. She's like really gotten the element of how to integrate that into a bigger image. But even just, again, Taylor with the misogyny and sexism, speaking up about that, it's consistent because it came from a personal place for her. If we're talking about Taylor Swift here, it came from a place of her experiencing that and then speaking up about it. But there was a lot of hesitation, if you look at her journey, to speak up about those things at first. And when she did, she gained a lot of popularity. She gained favors, but she has an army of people defending her now. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think I can go a day without knowing something about Taylor Swift.
Yeah, exactly.
You made me think about that. Like, I love working with coaches, and I can't say enough how important it is to like sit down and explore your values and what authenticity means to you, and trying to figure out what your purpose is or what you're passionate about. What does that journey look like for yourself in trying and landing here? What did that journey look like for you?
Well, in terms of like where I ended up now, a lot of it was following my own values intuitively at first. And then when I started getting coaching, I mean, I always have multiple coaches. I'm always a bit curious about coaches who don't have coaches, because I think that we need to keep growing to help our clients keep growing. But I have done every kind of self-awareness development thing you can imagine to really tease out my own values, and then the sort of the subtleties of those, because we have a first cut, which is sort of big things, but then we get into the details of what that actually means for me, and then how I live my life according to those values. So there are a few that are not always 100% lived, because it's hard to go about your day living all of the things, but definitely the majority of the things that I do from start of my day to the end of the day align with what's connected to me from a values perspective, and what I'm passionate about, and what I want for my own future as well. So it's a lot of self-awareness, a lot of self-work, a lot of professionals that work in different modalities to help me get there.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I also tell my students, I'm like, you have a lot of tools in your toolbox, and I want you to think about me being an extra tool that you have. Because to your point, I have my business coach, I have my brain science coach, I have my intuitive coach. Like, I have all these people that I talk to, but they make my life make sense, especially in the moments where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I doing any of this? Even though I work very much in a space of, I know what my values are, so I know I make decisions out of that.
And I just want to add something to that. And when you do something new, when you do something hard, when you do something a bit different, I think you have to up the support, and you have to, again, get different people to help you with different parts of that. So when I started shifting into the celebrity space, I increased the coaches I have, the training I had around speaking, all kinds of other things, because I knew that I had some bigger goals that I didn't have the skill set for at the beginning, and I had to expand that.
I love that. I feel like that's what life is, right? Is that continuous growth and dreaming towards goals, right? I just was saying the other day, in the back of my phone, one of my coaches had said, like, keep close to your heart a list of things that you want to achieve. And you don't have to look at it every day, but know that like you're pulling it into the universe. And the other day I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a year old and I've done all these things. And I didn't even realize, like, hadn't remembered that these were the things that I was working towards. But it was really fun to go through that exercise and be like, oh my gosh, I have achieved all the things that I put my mind to, with the help of all my coaches and my support, supportive family and everything like that. So what is like,
add to that? So even if you didn't look at that every day, the exercise that you did to get there starts to be embedded in you. So it's great if we look at our goals every day, but even if we don't, the fact that we've created them, we've put some structure to them, we've put what would success look like when we get this? Why is this important to me? What's the emotional motivation? Even if you never look at it again, that exercise already propels you towards the goals you have.
Yeah, because I feel like it's there, in the back of your mind of I have this is my outlook on life, right? So everything that I'm doing, I'm working towards those goals, which I think is really important to have for yourself. Just because, life can throw at you a lot of things. And it's like, how can I feel a little bit in control of knowing that there are so many things that are out of my control? When you think, I can't believe it's already September, but I just saw something this morning that was like, I can't believe it's already the end of the year and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, oh, well, this year I've done da, 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 da. So when you think about it coming to the end of the year and next year, what are some goals that you have that you're working towards for your business and clients and everything like that?
Yeah, I was just putting to paper right before we got on the call some bigger events that I want to be at that are in the pop culture space. So either as a speaker or not just as a participant, but somewhere in the public eye. So I don't want to name them all right now, but there's some big, let's say, pop culture events that I want to be part of. And then expanding the celebrity piece, because I'm starting to work a little bit more with athletes as well. And athletes are kind of an interesting group in this. And so we talked about musicians and actors, but athletes, they have a season. And once they get past that season, records get broken by other people.
Right,
Yeah. Like films stay around, music stays around, but their records 10 years later, 15 years later, people break them. And I think sometimes there's an element of what am I here for now? Or how am I relevant now? And when I've been exploring the social impact space with the athletes, it's really interesting to see how, first of all, it lights some fire again. Oh, now I have something meaningful. There's an element of legacy that lasts beyond just the physicality of their sport, let's say. And it gets them back in the public eye, which is, a lot of people enjoy that piece, the relevance piece and the celebrity piece. So I think expanding more into the athletic space is probably, I've started already, and it's exciting because I think there's a unique side to that might be a little different in the artist space.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I really was obsessed with the Olympics and I loved watching them this summer. I feel like they've been motivating for me for my whole life of like, wow, like if you put your mind to something, you really can make huge changes. And in that, I think her name's, I keep saying it wrong, but it's like Ilana Maher. Have you seen her?
I didn't follow the Olympics as closely as what you're saying. I followed the ones that were around the social issues.
Yeah. Well, she is like a rugby player. She's huge.
Oh,
like
yes.
buff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's doing Dancing with the Stars now. But I constantly think of like, wow, how inspiring of a woman to be on this platform and be saying like, hey, girls, your body doesn't need to look like this thing for you to be feminine, for you to be a woman, for you to show up in the life, big, tall, short, fat, whatever it is that you want to be, that's okay. I'm a woman and I'm feminine. And to your point, I think it's so important for them to build something bigger than the Olympics because they only happen every 4 years. And if something happens in between and you can't contribute again, then what are you doing? But she is like an example right now for me of like, wow, you can. And I think the world is so interesting how you jump from one thing to the next, like via social media, and you get exposure in ways and more exposure. That's really inspiring, even for little coaches like me who are like, where am I going in the world?
What you're pointing to also is that's where I start with people about, so with your rugby example, what she's speaking about is probably the start of something that actually has more legs to it as well. Like in terms of like, we look at Lizzo, like Lizzo and body image, right? Like that started from her own experiences. So a lot of times people don't know where to start, but they're often doing things already. And this is the same in businesses as well. Like sometimes I work with organizations that say, I don't know what our social platform is. And then when I dig deeper and I'm like, well, you're doing this, 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 and this, there's just no cohesiveness to it. So let's just build on what you've already started. And in this case, with the rugby player, that's probably where I would start if I were working in that with that person. But it's also, that's one place I look. And then also what upsets you, like what riles you up. That's also another great place to sort of dig deeper and see if this makes you frustrated or angry or upset to see, let's see what's in it, like what's deep down for you, why this is bothering you so much. So those are sort of two places I
Yeah.
start when I do their VIP days or start coaching with them, is just exploring what they're already talking about or what they're already
Yeah.
thinking about.
Yeah, because most of the time you're connecting with somebody and you don't even realize, right? And that
Yeah.
grows and it grows and it grows. But yeah, to your point, I think that's what I love helping clients with too. It's like what's your story and how do you want to tell it? Because you're the author of this story. So where are we going? What do we want to do? But what do like how can you be in control of it and not feel like, oh, all these other things around me are the reason why I am the way that I am, and take back like that control that you have. Um, so the name of my podcast is Discovering Your Brilliance. When you hear that and you're thinking about your clients, what would you tell somebody who is on a journey to discovering their brilliance?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about celebrities here with you now, but this happens for everybody, no matter if we're just, like you said, I'm just this coach or whatever. And we all have our own level of brilliance. And a lot of times we're already stepping into it, but maybe we're just not owning it, speaking about it, putting words to it. We might not even recognize it, because a lot of people's brilliance is something that they do easily, and they don't even think of it as something they're good at because it just comes so naturally to them. So that's often what I start with, even when I'm coaching people who aren't in that in the celebrity space. So yeah, I think somebody else, again, is that sounding board, can help you see what you don't always see about yourself. And you're talking about how you do that with your clients. So we all have something. And for me, brilliance is also what are you leaving the world with? So it's not only who you show up as, but what kind of impact are you having, and what kind of legacy are you leaving? And the legacy doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be. So when I think of someone like Elizabeth Taylor, the actress, we remember her more for her AIDS activism in the 80s, when nobody else was willing to step into that space. But because her friends were dying in Hollywood, she stepped in and raised, tons of money. I don't remember the exact amount, but millions of dollars for AIDS, and really destigmatized AIDS in Hollywood around that. We remember her more for that than we do for her movies or her marriages, which were sort of what followed her for most of her career. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's, again, someone in the public eye, but we all can leave a legacy, whether that's even in our community or in our family or at our kids' school or something. But for me, the fulfillment comes from making a meaningful difference in the world. And I think that's when we shine the brightest. If you watch people speak about something they really are passionate about, they glow from the inside out. So that's what I think of when I think of brilliance, is finding that thing, not only that makes you show up in your best version of yourself, but also make some kind of difference in the world, because that comes right back it reflects back at us in terms of our own experience.
Yeah. And what a big impact you're making on the world, because everybody that you're working on, helping them, create this voice for themselves, it's touching so many lives. And I just love to think about that, because you may not even know what your legacy could be, but I think it's really fun to think about it in that way. Like, I'm going to do all these things to create this legacy, but I might touch somebody who I will never meet. And I've touched them through the work that I'm doing and putting positivity out into the world and connecting people with their values and purpose and authenticity. So I love that.
I
You're
would say
making a huge
everyone,
impact.
thank you. And I would just say, just start for something you care about, and start small. Like, I think we put up a barrier of, I don't know how I'm going to do this big thing, so I'm not going to do anything.
Anything
And
at
we just
all.
have to start. And even with the celebrities, they've often already started without even realizing that they have. But if they haven't, it's part of the strategy, sometimes even just finding your voice. And you only find your voice by speaking. You can't find your voice in theory. You have to try saying different things, try it different ways. And the bigger the platform, of course, you have to have a bit more of a strategy around that, because you don't have the same luxury that non-famous people do to make mistakes with all of that.
Right.
But maybe it's starting by speaking with your friends or your team or your family. So because you can only find the words by speaking the words.
Right. And getting it out, because I think that is so important, is to learn to speak up for yourself, right? And what's
Yeah.
important to you, whatever way that might be, even if it's just in your family, if it's just in a relationship. I think it is so important to be able to speak up and speak out for yourself. I love what you said. I just love coaches. I love talking to coaches. People, go get a coach. It's going to make your lives so wonderful, because I think that is a platform where you can speak, and it's a safe space where you can just show up and talk and not have the judgments of the rest of the world, where, like, it's okay, say whatever you want. We're going to make it make sense. But I just love coaches so much. So thank you for everything today. As we kind of wind down, how can people get in touch with you, and where can people see you next? I know you're doing a lot of speaking engagements. Is there a place where people can see you too?
So the best way to reach me is through my social media, which on Instagram and TikTok is Lead with Melissa. I also have a site, leadwithmelissa.ca, not .com, .ca. Those are ways to reach me. And speaking engagements, if you want to be alerted to that, I have a newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks. So I'm happy to if you just send me a note saying that that's what you want, I can put you on that list. The newsletters are a bit more motivational, inspirational, every couple of weeks with some real tangible things in there, because that's usually my trademark as well.
I love it. I love it. And stay tuned. She's going to be doing big pop stages in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can only imagine. You have been so inspiring to me in the mastermind we're a part of, because I'm like, oh man, people I know are getting really big speaking engagements. I can do this too. So again, you've touched people's lives and you didn't even know it. Thank you so much. Do you have any parting words for our conversation today for our audience?
I guess just what I said a minute ago, all change starts with one action. Just start. Don't worry about it being right. I think a lot of times we think I talked about a strategy, but that's for someone who has like a whole brand strategy. For most people, it's just starting and trying different things. And, a coach can help you clarify that, but don't worry if you don't know where this all ends up. And don't worry if, you don't have to have a plan to start things.
Yeah. And you never know where it could go, right? And it could be fun, but that snowballing effect can be bigger than you ever even think.
Oh,
but you have to get started. You got to do something.
I always follow my energy, and it brings me in the most amazing places. And I never could have predicted where it would have brought me to start with.
Yeah. Have fun in thinking about where it could go that's bigger than anywhere your brain can even imagine right now. I always do that. Like, where could this go? I don't even know, but this could be really fun. Let's find out.
And even if it doesn't end up there, the journey is really fun.
So, and it could end up somewhere better, right? Like,
exactly.
It's so interesting. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you today, Melissa. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Let me see the ending.